This is part 10 of the Craftsman 6x48 Belt Disc Sander Rebuild series. If you haven't seen part 9, click the link at the top of the screen. In this video, we're going to be working on the power panel and fabricating a mount for the power panel. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff and welcome to my shop. We got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. So a power panel is a accessory that was offered by Craftsman that gave you an on-off switch on the front, and you could plug an extension cord into the back, you could plug your motor into it, and you could plug a lamp into it. And they had a couple different versions of these. One is the Power-Pak, which is more of a slimline version of it, and the power panel itself. So even with the power panel, and I know that they chose some weird funky spelling for all this stuff, there were actually a couple of different designs of the power panel, and they look a little bit different on the front, but they all work basically the same way. Again, you've got that on-off switch on the front, and then on the back you've got two receptacles, one for the motor and one for a lamp, and then a plug which would allow you to connect an extension cord to it. So you would plug the motor into the motor slot, and the on-off switch would turn on and off the motor. The lamp would have constant power, and you would turn the lamp on and off by using the switch that's on the lamp itself. So this would be a period correct way of putting a switch on your power tool, whether it's a bandsaw or a table saw or a wood lathe or the belt disc sander or whatever, decades before power strips were invented. However, what they didn't take into account was how these would mount to these tools. A lot of these pedestal mounts were produced before the power panels came out. So some of these pedestal mounts, like the one that we're working with here, does not have a place to mount a power panel. And for that, we're going to fabricate a mount. Additionally, I am rebuilding this power panel and making a mount for it actually to go to my belt disc sander that I have. And for my sister, she's not going to need to connect a lamp to this thing, so I'm going to make a different power panel-ish thing that's going to look, hopefully, kind of period correct, and it's going to be loosely based on the power panel. So the bottom line is, if you want to rebuild a power panel and make it a grounded circuit so that it's 3 prongs instead of 2 prongs, this is what we're going to be doing today. So as I said, this is the power panel, and these are the 2 parts that we would look to mount it to. And on the right side you've got the top mount for the pedestal. And my original thought is that I would fit a mount inside this gap here, but trying to get it to line up and fit in there with that single bolt is going to be a little difficult. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the bottom part, the top of the mount for the pedestal, and make a mount that fits in that kind of cutout there. So what I'm going to do first is fab this up in cardboard so that we have something to work with. And we're just going to take a couple of different measurements, and we know that this will be wide enough to fit the power panel across it. And we'll cut that out. Make sure that's going to fit, and then we'll do a couple of bends in it. Now we could have just had a straight piece coming out, but that would have been kind of sharp, and this will have a better finish to it. And that's how it's going to sit once we make it. So I'll be working with a piece of 16 gauge plate steel. You can get this at any of your big box stores. And we're just going to slap some tape on there that we can draw on and easily see for our measurements. And once we found the center, we cut out we make the cutout for the exterior, and then all the bends and where we're going to put the curved area there. And we'll refine that with the belt sander after we cut it out. So here we are at my bandsaw, and we're just going to cut out this. So we'll do the 2 long cuts first. Alright, and then we'll get that top section squared away. Can't really cut curves with 16 gauge plate steel on this bandsaw very well. So again, we're just roughing it out right now, and we'll refine that with the grinder, or in this case the 1-inch belt disc sander. And we'll make sure it fits. Clean up all the edges. We'll come back and round the corners on all this once we know that we're in the ballpark of where we want to be. So next we're just going to transfer where we're going to drill that hole. And then we're going to mark where the bends are going to be. And I incorrectly placed these 2 holes on the bend line. I realized that after, or before I drill them, and correct that. But for right now, they're about a 1/4 of an inch higher than they need to be on there. So I've got this placed in my float lock vise, and I run into an issue here a little bit later where the sides of this that are gripped in the vise itself are not perfectly level. Because of that, it's not very well retained in the vise. But this is where I realized that those 2 holes down at the bottom there were in the wrong place. We're just going to center punch them so that this drill has no problem punching directly where we want it to go. And you can see that even though I'm using a vise and I've got that wooden board sort of clipped in there, I'm not actually touching the steel. So if it comes loose of the vise, I'm not going to get cut. Well, this is the problem. These 2 lines right here are not perfectly level with the sides of the vise. And so what happens is, as I lift this drill bit up and out of the work comes with it, and it starts to spin. And this is why we use a vise on a drill press instead of trying to hold something by hand, because that would have definitely cut the living crap out of my hand. And if you're wearing gloves when you do that, it would have absolutely dragged your hand towards the drill bit, snagging the glove. So as we are coming up, this is when it comes loose. So we are lucky that we were using a vise, and everything worked the way it should have, except that the work was not properly clamped inside that vise. Rather than messing with that hole again, I think I'm going to just move on to the other holes, which are smaller. And the way that float lock vise works, it grips tighter near that screw in the back of it there, kind of further away from the screen. So I'm not so worried about the back end of this coming up, which it didn't. And there we go. So we're going to clean up all those holes. So we'll go over to the vise. And first we're going to clean up that big one with this round file. And then we'll do some deburring. And then we've got these two small ones we're just going to deburr. And we are good to hook. So now we're going to do the bends. I'm sure there's a diving joke in there somewhere. So basically I just want to line it up on that line that we drew, and we'll start bending it with a hammer. And make sure that it's about 90 degrees, and do the same with the other end. And we just keep working with it to get it nice and square. We're just making sure that any of the deformation that we caused gets flat. Then we'll clean this up on my 6x48 belt disc sander. It's a wider belt there. And then we're going back to the 1-inch belt disc sander and rounding those corners. Alright, so we're back over at the workbench, and what we're going to do is get all this tape off of this thing now. I think I sped this footage up because this thing got warm while we were sanding it and hammering on it and stuff, bending it. That tape is really on there now. So we use a scraper to get it loose and then get it off of there. And the tape does help to cut down on the amount of hammer markings from where we were banging on it with the hammer as well. There, it's going to fit. So I've got this sanding sponge. I have no idea what grit it is. It's pretty aggressive. And we're just going to clean it up with that. And that'll help us deburr all the outer edges as well as clean up the exterior of it. Make sure that the power panel is going to fit on there, and it does not, because those holes are exactly the same size as the screws in there. So I'm going to need to open up those holes a little bit, which at this point is pretty simple. We can just use a hand drill, just go one bit bigger and drill it out by hand. Like so. Do a little deburring. And presto, fits like a glove. That's actually upside down, but it still fits. I just wanted to make sure it's all going to go together right. So here we are with the power panel, and we're going to disassemble it. So it's got these long screws, two of them that go all the way through it, and then it's got these I don't know what you call these kind of nuts, but they're kind of stamped metal nuts. Once you've got those out, you remove the front screw for the on-off switch, and then you can remove the front panel. Inside it we have this switch, and then the two receptacles and the plug. And the receptacles and the plug have these little spring sides to them that snap them in place. So if we compress those with those pliers, we can push them through and pull them out. Too easy. So this is what we're going to be using to replace those. And this is a grounded plug, for instance, and then we'll have two grounded receptacles. So we're just going to measure the base below the lip of it, which comes out to roughly 7/8 square. And we want it to be kind of center, so we've got to draw all this out, figure out where our cut lines are going to be. The same for the receptacles, 7/8 square. So we're also going to need to fabricate a shim that's going to fill in the gaps where we're going to have gaps. Without this, the bottom plug is not going to be retained inside here, because you can see how the bottom section there is open wider than the cutout that we're going to do. So the spring clip sides wouldn't have anything to grab on. So we have to have this shim in there for this to work. So that's basically what the shim is going to look like, and you'll see how it all fits together here, like so. So we're going to cut that the back side of the power panel out with a Dremel and a cutoff wheel. This is my Fordham, but it's the same thing as a Dremel, really. So we're just going to cut these lines as close as we can. And then we'll clean all that up with a file. So I'm just using a block of wood so that we're not bending this thing inside the vise. And we'll use some files to get it as square and cleaned up as possible. We'll do some test fitting of the receptacles and the plug and open it up gradually as we need. So those fit. Now we got to do the plug side. And it should fit this time. Boom. So now we're going to cut out the shim. And for this, we're using, I think this is like, I don't know, 20 gauge maybe, steel. It's thinner than the 16 gauge we were using earlier, and it's thin enough that we can cut it out with metal shears. But still thick enough that it's not going to just bend all weak. We're just test fitting it as we work on it with the file. clean it up and deburr it. Make sure that that receptacle is going to fit in there the way it needs to. Boom. Just finish the deburring on it. You might be wondering, well, how the heck are we going to mount that on the inside? And we'll worry about that in a minute. So we're over at the grinder with the wire wheel on it, and we're just going to clean up the outside of these parts of the power panel. Just remove all the paint, and on the front part we'll remove the decal, or what's left of it. I'm not going to really be concerned with the inside of this thing. Clean up those screws and the nuts for them. And that is going to wrap up this video. So in the next video we'll finish up with this power panel and start work on the other power panel. In the description of the video I'm going to link my thread over on Garage Journal about the power panel, so you can learn more about it if you want. If you got any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. I'll get to them when I can. As always, I appreciate the support, and I will see you guys next time.